My paint-splattered overalls hid an FBI badge, and my mural of progress was a cover for exposing corruption. But it wasn't until a cop sprayed white primer directly into my face that the real masterpiece began. The smell of spray paint always felt like home, not the chemical, headache-inducing kind, but the scent of creation, a vibrant color blooming against a dull brick wall. For the past 3 weeks, my home had been Oakhaven, a sleepy little town with a rot festering just beneath its quaint surface. To everyone here, I was Kiki, a 22-year-old art student on a summer project, hired by the city council to paint a mural of community and progress on the side of the old laundromat. They didn't know the mural was a cover, a canvas for a much uglier picture I was trying to expose. My real name is Special Agent Maya Brooks, and my real employer is the FBI. Oakhaven PD had a problem, a big one. Complaints of racial profiling, illegal searches, and evidence tampering had been piling up for years, all dismissed as disgruntled locals. My job was to be the perfect target, young, black, an outsider. I was here to see just how deep the rot went, with a pinhole camera on my backpack strap and a wire under my paint-splattered overalls. For 3 weeks it was mostly quiet. Annoying catcalls from teenagers, a few suspicious glares from older residents, but nothing concrete. The local cops would cruise by, slow down, and then drive on. I was beginning to think the intelligence was wrong. Then, on a sweltering Tuesday afternoon, he showed up. Officer Miller. He had a reputation. The name always came up in the sealed witness statement, whispered with a mixture of fear and hatred. He didn't pull up with sirens. He just rolled his cruiser to the curb, the engine a low grumble that seemed to curdle the air. He sat there for a full 5 minutes just watching me. I could feel his eyes on my back, a prickling sensation that had nothing to do with the sun. I kept my hand steady, adding a streak of golden yellow to a sunbeam in my mural. Play it cool, Brooks. You're Kiki, a carefree artist, not an agent with a Glock 26 strapped to her ankle. Finally, the car door creaked open. His boots crunched on the gravel as he approached. "What do you think you're doing?" His voice was a low rasp, full of gravel and unearned authority. I turned, giving him my best, slightly annoyed but unintimidated artist smile. "Making the world a prettier place, officer. 1 brick at a time." I gestured to the mural. "The city hired me." He smirked, a nasty little twist of his lips. He was a big man, with a gut that strained the buttons of his uniform, and a face that looked permanently flushed. "The city, huh? I don't see any permit." I sighed dramatically, playing my part. I wiped my hands on a rag and pulled the laminated permit from my back pocket, the city seal clearly visible. "Right here, signed and sealed." He barely glanced at it, his eyes scanning me from head to toe. "Things like this, they attract the wrong element." He nudged one of my paint cans with the toe of his boot. "Tagging, vandalism, you people seem to have a knack for it." You people. There it was. The first little nibble on the bait. My heart rate kicked up a notch, but my face remained placid. "I'm not tagging. I'm painting a commissioned mural. It's art." "Looks like a mess to me," he sneered, taking another step closer. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. A big, colorful mess. Just what this town needs. More mess. He was trying to get a rise out of me. Standard intimidation tactic. I knew the playbook. I just had to stay in character. Well, art is subjective, I guess. I turned back to the wall, hoping he'd take the hint and leave. He didn't. Instead, I heard the snap of a latex glove. My blood ran cold. I slowly turned my head. He was pulling on a pair of black gloves, his eyes glinting with a malice that was anything but professional. "You know, Kiki," he said, drawing out my undercover name like it was an insult, "I think your art needs a little something extra, a little touch-up." Before I could react, he grabbed the can of primer white from my crate. My mind raced. This was an escalation I hadn't prepared for. This wasn't just verbal harassment anymore. My hand twitched, hovering near the small panic button concealed on my belt. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Miller just smiled that ugly smile again. "Improving your work." And then he pointed the nozzle right at my face and pressed down. A cold, viscous shockwave hit me. The acrid tang of aerosol filled my nose and mouth. Thick, sticky white paint streamed down my face, into my hair, blinding my right eye. It dripped from my chin onto my overalls, a stark, violating streak against the colorful splatters I'd earned through my work. He didn't stop. He emptied half the can on me, a deliberate, demeaning act of assault under the blazing afternoon sun. The paint dripped, slow and thick like molasses, down my cheek. I could hear him laughing, a choked, wheezing sound. My training, my instincts, every fiber of my being screamed at me to drop the cover, to take him down right here on this grimy sidewalk. My fingers brushed against the panic button on my belt, the signal that would bring my team swooping in. But I paused. My vision cleared just enough in my left eye to see the smug, triumphant look on his face. He thought he'd won. He thought he'd broken the little black girl who dared to bring color to his town. He had no idea who he was dealing with, but in that moment, I knew. This wasn't the end of the operation. This was the real beginning. I didn't move. I just stood there, a statue of humiliation, while the world came back into focus through a curtain of white paint. My right eye was completely sealed shut. The paint was already starting to harden on my skin, pulling it tight. My primary objective was to gather evidence, and Miller had just handed me a masterpiece on a silver platter. Every second he stood there gloating, my pinhole camera was capturing his smirking, hateful face, the badge number on his chest, with 1327, and the glistening white paint dripping from my eyelashes. "See?" he grunted, tossing the empty can onto the pile of my supplies. It clattered loudly in the sudden silence. Much better, clean slate. My training kept my body from shaking, but the fury was a white-hot coil in my gut. I forced a tremor into my voice, playing the role of the terrified girl he saw me as. Why would you do that?" I managed to choke out, the words tasting like chemicals. "Consider it a warning," he said, his voice dropping. He took a step closer, invading my space. "This town doesn't need your kind of art, or your kind. Pack up your little paint set and go back where you came from before you cause some real trouble." Just then, another patrol car pulled up behind his. A younger officer, Reed, got out. He took one look at me, his eyes widening for a fraction of a second before a mask of indifference slid into place. He didn't say a word. He just leaned against the hood of his car, arms crossed, a silent endorsement of his partner's actions. This was it. This was the rot. It wasn't just one bad apple. It was the whole damn barrel. "Everything all right here, Frank?" Reed called out, his tone lazy. "Just finishing up," Miller grunted. He turned back to me, his face inches from mine. "We understand each other," he whispered, the threat hanging thick and heavy in the air. I could only nod, the dried paint cracking around my mouth. It felt like my face was breaking. He held my gaze for another long moment, satisfying himself that he had broken me, then turned and sauntered back to his car. He and Reed shared a quiet laugh before getting into their respective vehicles and driving away, leaving me alone on the sidewalk, dripping and disgraced. The moment their cars were out of sight, my posture changed. The victimized slump disappeared. I straightened my back, my movements becoming precise and economical. I quickly packed up my essential gear, my mind a steel trap cataloging every detail. Time of day, location, badge number 1327 for Miller, 1488 for Reed. the make and model of their cruisers, the exact words they used. I left the mural and the rest of the supplies. They were part of the crime scene now. Walking back to my small furnished apartment 2 blocks away was the longest walk of my life. People stared. A woman pulled her child closer. A group of teenagers snickered. I was a spectacle, a walking piece of performance art about hatred. I let them stare. Their reactions were just more data. Inside, I locked the deadbolt and leaned against the door, finally letting out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The anger I'd been suppressing washed over me in a tidal wave. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. Instead, I walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The face staring back was a monster's mask, a cruel caricature. My tight curls were matted with stiff, white gunk. One eye was swollen and glued shut. Streaks of primer covered my neck and chest. I saw red. Not from an injury, but from pure, unadulterated rage. I spent the next hour under the scalding spray of the shower, scrubbing at my skin with a rough washcloth until it was raw. The paint came off in flakes, swirling down the drain, but the feeling of violation remained. With my hair still stiff and my skin still smelling faintly of aerosol, I sat down at my laptop. I carefully removed the microSD card from my backpack camera and plugged it in. The file loaded, and there it was. Crystal clear audio and video. Miller's sneering face, his words. Reed's silent complicity, the moment the white spray obliterated the camera's view. It was perfect. It was everything. I initiated a secure call to my handler, Agent Davis. "Brooks, report. You're off schedule," he said, his voice tinny through the encrypted line. "We have a problem," I said, my voice flat, "and an opportunity. Sending you a file now. Packages labeled Exhibit A." There was silence on his end for the 3 minutes it took the file to upload and for him to watch it. When he spoke again, his voice was tight with fury. "Jesus Christ, Maya, are you hurt? Med team is 5 minutes from your door." "Negative." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just need a new can of primer." "That's not funny." "The operation is compromised. I'm pulling you out." Miller crossed a line. "This is aggravated assault on a federal officer." "No," I said, my voice hard as iron. "If you pull me out now, they'll bury it. They'll claim it was a dispute with a local artist, and Miller will get a slap on the wrist. I can't let that happen, Davis. He didn't assault a federal officer. He assaulted Kiki, a 22-year-old black girl with no connections and no power. And now, Kiki is going to exercise her rights." "What are you talking about?" Davis asked, a note of alarm in his voice. "He thinks he broke me. He thinks I'm going to pack my bags and run," I said, standing up and looking at my reflection in the dark laptop screen. I could still see flecks of white paint near my hairline. I wasn't going to wash them out. I wanted them to see. "I'm not running. I'm going to walk right into his precinct and file a formal complaint." Davis was apoplectic. "Absolutely not, Brooks. You walk into that station and you're walking into the lion's den. Your cover is blown. It's too dangerous." "My cover is what makes this the perfect trap," I countered, my voice low and intense. "They won't be expecting it. They'll be arrogant. They'll try to intimidate me, lose my paperwork, maybe even threaten me. And we'll get all of it. This isn't just about Miller anymore. It's about the entire system that protects him. It's about Officer Reed standing there and doing nothing. It's about the desk sergeant who will try to laugh me out of the building. I'm going in." There was a long pause. I could practically hear the gears turning in Davis's head. He knew I was right. This was a rare chance to catch the entire rotten infrastructure in the act. "Fine," he finally relented, his voice grim. "But you're not going in alone. You'll be wired for audio and video, full body this time. A 3-person tactical team will be in an unmarked van across the street. You give the distress code. I'm just trying to understand the process. and they're coming through the doors. No questions asked. Understood. Understood, I said, a grim satisfaction settling over me. An hour later, I was ready. I hadn't changed out of my paint-stained overalls. I left the stubborn white flecks in my hair. I wanted them to see their handiwork. As I walked towards the Oak Haven Police Department, I felt a strange sense of calm. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. I was no longer Kiki the artist. I was Special Agent Maya Brooks, and I was going to war. The precinct was exactly what you'd expect. Stale air, buzzing fluorescent lights, and a plexiglass window separating the public from a bored-looking officer at the front desk. He looked up from his phone as I approached, his eyes flicking over my appearance with blatant disdain. "Can I help you?" he sighed, already dismissive. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I'm here to file a formal complaint against one of your officers, Officer Frank Miller." The desk sergeant actually laughed, a short, ugly bark. "Miller? What did he do? Give you a ticket for your terrible parking?" "He assaulted me," I said, my voice ringing with clarity in the quiet room. I leaned forward slightly, making sure the camera hidden in the button of my shirt had a clear view of his face. He deliberately sprayed a can of industrial paint in my face. His partner, Officer Reed, witnessed the entire event and did nothing. The sergeant's smirk faltered. He looked from my face to the paint on my clothes. "That's a serious accusation, little lady." "It was a serious crime." He sighed, making a show of being put out. "Fine, fill this out." He slid a form through the slot in the glass. "But let me give you some friendly advice. People who make things up about good cops in this town tend to find their lives get complicated." I took the form and a pen. I filled it out with meticulous detail, my handwriting neat and precise. Name, Kiki Johnson. Address, my undercover apartment. Incident details. I left nothing out. As I wrote, I could feel eyes on me. I glanced up. Through the doorway behind the front desk, I saw him. Officer Miller. He'd obviously been alerted. He was standing with Officer Reed, and the look on his face was pure, unrestrained fury. He thought I was a bug he'd already squashed. He stormed out to the front desk. "What is this?" he boomed, snatching the half-filled form from my hands. "I told you to get out of town." "And I'm telling you that you're a criminal who hides behind a badge," I said, meeting his enraged gaze without flinching. "You've got a lot of nerve," he snarled, crumpling the form in his massive fist. "You're trespassing. Get out now, or I'll arrest you." "Arrest me for what?" I challenged, raising my voice slightly. "Filing a complaint? Is that against the law in Oak Haven?" The desk sergeant was starting to look nervous, but Miller was too far gone in his own rage. He reached across the counter, his hand clamping down on my arm like a vice. "For starters, public nuisance, resisting arrest, assault on an officer. I'm sure I can think of a few more." His fingers dug into my skin, and the pain was sharp. It was the last piece of the puzzle. Physical intimidation, threatening false charges, destroying a formal complaint, all in the lobby of his own precinct. All on camera. I looked him dead in the eye. I didn't need the distress code. It was time. "Officer Miller," I said, my voice suddenly dropping its manufactured fear and taking on the clipped, authoritative tone of my profession. "My name is Special Agent Maya Brooks of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The confusion that flashed across his face was immensely satisfying. His grip loosened slightly. "This entire precinct has been the subject of a federal investigation for the past 6 months, I continued, my voice resonating with power. "Your assault on me this afternoon was the final piece of evidence we needed. You have the right to remain silent." As I spoke, the front doors of the precinct burst open. My tactical team, clad in black vests emblazoned with FBI, swarmed in, weapons drawn. Davis was right behind them, his face like thunder. 2 agents immediately cuffed a stunned Officer Reed and a pale-faced desk sergeant. Miller stared at me, then at the agents flooding his station, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. He let go of my arm as if he'd been burned. "Agent Davis," I said, my eyes never leaving Miller's. "This is Officer Frank Miller, badge number 1327. I'd like to formally charge him with aggravated assault on a federal officer, witness intimidation, and deprivation of rights under color of law." Davis nodded grimly. "Officer Miller," he said, pulling out a pair of cuffs, "you're under arrest." Miller just stood there, his mouth hanging open as the steel clicked shut around his wrists. He looked at my paint-splattered overalls, at the white flakes in my hair, and finally at the cold professional certainty in my eyes. He hadn't just attacked some random black girl. He'd assaulted the very person sent to bring his whole corrupt world crashing down. The mural on the side of the laundromat was about community and progress. It was a lie. But today, standing in the ruins of the Oak Haven PD, I felt like I had finally painted a true masterpiece. It was a picture of justice,